What is up? Welcome back to the channel. So today we've got a familiar project back in the shop. It's the brand new ZR2. Got some new upgrades for it. Doing some upper control arms, and then we're going to do some spacer brackets for the sway bar. Last time you saw this, we did the 2-inch front, 1-inch rear lift kit and the differential drop from Level Up Suspension, which he went back to Level Up Suspension for their sway bar drop brackets. And then we went to Icon and got some really nice tubular upper control arms. So let's go check out what we got for it. All right, so this is what we got for installation today. Again, from Level Up, we got the sway bar drop brackets. After we did the 2-inch front lift from Level Up, and then we also did the differential drop from Level Up. This is just one more step to get everything back in line, make sure everything's riding like factory, and that you got good handling up front. So we'll go ahead and install those, pretty simple. And then these things look good. This is from Icon. These are their tubular upper control arms. Not only do they look great, but also they're gonna give you a little bit more adjustment whenever you're doing your alignment and kind of help get everything back in spec and make sure that everything is riding like it should. It's pretty basic as far as what they come with. You know, you got new bushings, the upper caps, I got some grease zerks down here. So yeah, really pretty cut and dry as far as what we're doing today, and hopefully shouldn't take too long. So get a good video for you and show you what we got. So first things first, we got to get this thing jacked up and get those front tires pulled off, and then we'll get started. All right, so first thing we're going to knock out here is we're going to go ahead and do our sway bar drop. So this is your sway bar. We're actually, it runs in the rear on the 2024s. I think on the earlier models it was in the front, and most of the time your sway bar is in the front of your whole axle assembly. However, like I said, the 2024s, it's in the rear. So that's the front of the vehicle there, and this is the rear. I'm laying on the driver's side. You can see our passenger side control arm over there just to kind of get you oriented on where we're at. But yeah, pretty simple. 4 bolts will drop your sway bar down. And then we'll throw these spacers in. And now you can kind of see here, our factory bolts will go back in into these 2 holes, and then now our new mounting location is slightly further back. It's not much, but slightly. We're going to move that to the rear, and then yeah, pretty much just going to slide these in, bolt it in, pretty cut and dry. So let's go ahead and knock that out real fast. And on these factory hardware and the new hardware, everything will be torqued to 40 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and torque this down before we put our sway bar back up there. All right, now we can swing our sway bar back up and mount it into the new holes. All right, so that was it for the sway bar drops. I mean, pretty simple, pretty quick, definitely something you could do in your driveway. So we are done with that, and you can see there it kind of drops it down, moves it away just a little bit, and then, well, it's hard to tell, but now our sway bar bracket is more, perpendicular. Everything's just at a better angle, and it also moves your sway bar link just a little bit further away from your shock in case you were running a different type of shock assembly or anything like that where you needed a little bit more clearance. So yeah, we're done with that. So next up is we're gonna go ahead and get these bad boys pulled out and get our new upper control arms in. So let's get set up for that. All right, so getting started on the upper control arms. So first thing we need to do is we're gonna go ahead and take out this fender liner. There's one plastic clip, and then there's like 57 of these little Torx heads. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and remove all those and pull the entire liner out. All right, so now that we got the inner fender liner out of the way, you can see we got a lot more access to our upper control arm bolts, as well as our upper strut bolts that are nuts that we'll have to get to here in a minute. First, before we do any of that, we're gonna go ahead and get this ABS line out of the way. So we're working on the passenger side. On the driver's side, there's another set of wiring that goes to your brakes. just unplug that. And then as far as disconnecting your ABS line, it'll be the same thing. There's you got your wheel speed sensor there, undo that, a few plastic push rivets, pull those, and a few 10 mils, like 1, 2, and 3 way up here. So yeah, just pop all the plastic pieces out. Pretty much your wiring should be free from this point. You can leave that bolt in, and so your wiring should just be dangling from this point, and we'll get it set out of the way and safe. So that way we don't have to worry about damaging our wheel speed sensor or anything like that. It's just completely out of the way. We don't have to worry about it. So that's what I'm going to do next. All right, now with our wiring, I'm just going to lay it off to the side, make sure it's out of the way where it won't get hit on anything. Okay, next up, I'm going to go ahead and remove the sway bar link where it connects to the spindle, and then also our tie rod. Go ahead and remove both those and just get them out of the way. All right, now we're ready to remove our upper ball joint. So we are going to go ahead and loosen that off. I'm not going to take this nut all the way off. I'm just going to take it down to the end, leave a good amount of threads on there. And then I'm going to you can either use a ball joint separator and drive it in there and drive those apart, or usually just a little tap on the spindle, or on just a little tap with a hammer will just get it to pop free, especially on these newer vehicles. Now, if it's older, yeah, it's a different story. And also, since we just had all this apart, it should come apart pretty easy for us. At least the other side did. Okay, so it popped free. I actually just tapped it with a pry bar that we had laying here, and then it came right off. I didn't have to get the hammer. So now we'll go ahead and remove this nut. So there is a little bit of tension from your spindle on this upper ball joint right here. So whenever that nut comes off, it'll pop free just a little bit. So just make sure that you maintain control of the spindle. Right now I've got it in between my legs, so it's not gonna go anywhere crazy. And then we will wire it up to the frame so that nothing gets damaged as far as our lower ball joint or our axle. And again, whenever you're laying that spindle down to the side, just try not to be clanking this thing around too much. You don't want to wear out your other components quicker than they need to be. So right now it's wired up, it's secure, and it's just laying off to the side. Nothing's going to get damaged that way. So next up is to go ahead and remove the strut. So we'll go ahead and undo these lower bolts here. They're 15 mils, so we'll go ahead and pop those out. Now, you can throw a jack stand underneath your lower control arm. For us, it doesn't really move much. It's not going to have that much travel out of it, especially since my tie rod is, my sway bar link is actually still in the spindle. So that will actually help keep the bottom from dropping too much. Now I might have to pull that later. Right now it's loose. All I got to do is just pull it out of there. I just got the nut just hand tied on the back. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do next. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the lower shock bolts out. So now our lower part of our strut is disconnected. So now we have these 3 nuts on the top here. So there is, which is really hard to get to where you can see, there is a wiring loom on both sides. This one's a little bigger than the other side. So you have a little plastic clip that's down on the top of this bolt right here. You'll just have to get a screwdriver or a pry bar, pop that off, and then remove these 3 nuts on top. Ours, I think, if I remember right, these nuts are a little different than what you're looking at if you're factory. These came with the level up suspension kit that we've already added. So these nuts are a little bit different. The factory ones are tight the whole way off, and it is a pain in the butt. These are a little easier once we break them free, then we can just spin them off by hand, which is a lot better. So, but anyway, that's what we need to do next, is get that wiring loom popped off and then get these 3 nuts off. All right, now we are good to remove our strut. Okay, so now we're ready. We can go ahead and pull these 2 bolts that are holding our upper control arm in. The bolts go out each way, so they'll come out, this way and that way. The nuts are on the inside, and this is the reason we had to pull the strut, is because these nuts are not welded in or hard mounted or anything, they're loose, so you have to get a socket on both sides. So now we'll go ahead and just pull those. They're both 21 mils. All right, that's it for our upper control arm. Okay, so now we need to get our new upper control arm prepped. So pretty much all we need to do is with these is you're gonna grease everything. So pull them all the way apart. Make sure you grease all this inner rod, all this. Get plenty of grease on all of it. After that, on the underneath here, you have 2 little spots for your grease certs. So we'll screw those in. Don't over tighten them. Just tighten them in until they're snug, and then you want them facing, once it's on the vehicle, you want it facing outboard. That way you can get to them to grease them, so it'll be towards the tubing. So that's what we're gonna do next, is get all this prepped. All right, so grease gun ran out of grease there. I had to use what was left. So anyway, we're good now. Everything's extremely greased up. So now again, we're gonna install these grease certs into the back, and then whenever we get them snug in there, we want them facing towards the tubular part of the control arm. That way they're facing out and we can get to them after they're installed. And those don't need to be overly tight. It's really just to hold your grease in and to put grease in. So you don't need to just over snug them. I might be able to go one more turn with that one, but there's really not a need to, because grease isn't gonna leak out of the threads and it's not gonna come out. I mean, it's solid. So I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna wipe these down a little bit more, and then we'll get them over there and we'll start getting everything reinstalled. All right, so now we are ready to reinstall. So you're reusing the factory hardware. Just make sure it goes back in the same way with the bolts coming in from either side. All right, so now that we got our bolts back in, we are gonna use some Loctite, and we'll throw these back on, and then we'll torque them down to 120 is the torque spec for both of these bolts. All right, and there you have it. Our upper control arm is now installed, nice and greased up, so it'll be silent. Should last for a long time. So next up, we'll go ahead and get the strut reinstalled. I just have the top snug right now. What I found the best way to torque these, which they torque to about 45 foot-pounds. I think it's 43 foot-pounds. The best way to do that for me is to go in through the top with a bunch of extensions. So we'll finish up with that. Actually, I'm gonna just do that last. I've got them snug right now, so we'll torque those down through the hood. What I'm gonna do next is go ahead and reinstall the lower shock bolts. So that's a bit more of a pain for us because of the lift kit. The longer shock that we have, or strut that we have, makes it a little more difficult to get those lower bolts lined up and in. As you saw there, we use a pry bar. Had to kind of just pry it in just a little bit to get these lined up, but they're in, they're not cross-threaded, everything's like it should be. So now we'll torque those down to 40 foot-pounds. Okay, so now we can start reassembly of the upper control arm. This does come with a new nylon lock nut. So again, just make sure you maintain positive control of that spindle, and we'll go ahead and remove our wiring. And this is where I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my sway bar mount just to make this a little easier to work with. And I'm pretty sure that these tapers are longer on the icons, because it makes getting this nut on a lot easier than with the stock one. It does have a different torque spec from stock though. So the torque spec for this is only 60 foot-pounds. For the stock setup, I believe it was like 32 on initial pass and then 90 degrees after that. So since this is all Icon and their product, I'm gonna go by their specs. So I'm gonna torque this upper control, or this upper ball joint to 60 foot-pounds. Okay, next up we can go ahead and reinstall our tie rod and our sway bar link. Okay, and then our tie rod end is gonna be 26 foot-pounds on the first pass, and then we're gonna go 85 to 95 degrees on our second pass. So again, 26 first pass, and then 85 to 95 degrees second pass. And then for our sway bar link, I'm just gonna get that good and snug. I actually can't find a torque spec for that, so I'm just gonna throw a 10 mil on the bolt itself, and then I think it was a 21 on the nut, and I'm just gonna get that about as tight as I can with that combo. All right, so next up, we're ready to reroute our wiring. It's a tongue twister. With the Icon upper control arms, it only has 2 spots to plug in, whereas our factory harness had 3. So I was able to slide these just a little bit, get everything lined up, and then I actually just clipped off the 3rd since we're not gonna be using it. And I'm gonna leave the nut on this one loose so that we can get our little dust cover on the top here. So I'll wait on that. So with this dust cover, you just have this 3M double-sided foam. So I'm gonna install that to the back side here, and then we're just gonna slide it right on top right here and just push it down and get it on there. Yeah, so on this side, on the passenger side, the clamps are slightly different. It looks like I should actually be able to pull it apart. Okay, finally, so this is just a different style altogether than what was on the passenger side, but I finally got it disconnected. So now I'm gonna slide it up where it needs to be. And then this back one back here, I'm just gonna go ahead and just remove it. All right, so we are finally wrapped up on this side. The only thing we have left to do is come in through from the top and torque these down. So we're about to do that, but as far as everything down here, we're completely done. You can see there, kind of a bit more of a pain on the passenger side compared to the driver's side. The driver's side, I was able to slide these clips and get them to line up. But the passenger side is a completely different style of clip for whatever reason. And so it's just a little bit harder to get these clips off on your ABS line. But finally got these lined up, plugged in, tightened down our line, and reinstalled our wheel speed sensor down here. So, and then everything's torqued on the bottom end, so we're completely done under here. And there's a good look at our new upper control arms, if I can get the right angle on it. Kind of hard to tell with the sun setting, but and again, we torqued this down to 60 foot-pounds. Just did not seem like enough, but again, that's what Icon recommended, and we'll check that again after a couple, 100 miles or so. So yeah, we are done. I'm gonna go ahead and get the top of the strut torqued, and I'll get the tires on. We'll pull it outside and we'll get a little bit better look at it. I will say, well, if I can get the right angle on it, you can see right there, that's our grease certs back there. On the forward-most one, you can get to it. I was gonna go ahead and throw some more grease in there just to kind of top it off. On this side though, I can't get my grease gun on there. I think once we get it on the ground and this upper control arm kind of levels out a bit, I think we'll be able to get our grease gun on there. So I am gonna go ahead and top them both off with grease. But other than that, yeah, we're about to wrap this thing up. Oh, and getting the fender liner in, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. You just got to wrestle it back up in there, install all 109 bolts that go back that hold your fender liner in. And I mean, that's pretty cut and dry. So I'll go ahead and cut that part out, and we'll get all this side wrapped up, and then I'll get it outside and we'll take another look at it. All right, so we are all done and wrapped up. It's looking pretty good. So here's a look here, how that new upper control arm looks. Yeah, I'm liking it. So I took it out for a little test drive. Everything ran good, drove really well. We got everything greased up, so should be nice and quiet on those upper control arms. And what else? And then we got the sway bar drop in, which you've already seen that earlier, but nice and simple, not much to it. But now we got some better geometries under there for that sway bar. So yeah, pretty sharp. Man, I can't wait to see this thing once you get some a little bit bigger tires, maybe just a slightly bigger offset. But yeah, this is a really, really nice, sharp truck, and just getting better every time it comes and sees me. So I'm liking it. All right, so that wraps it up for this video. I hope y'all guys enjoyed it, and I hope it helps somebody out. So make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.